Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am Haley Mitchell-Haugen. I am the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Editions and Sheila-Na-Gig Online. And today we are celebrating the publication of Cynthia Anderson's book, Arrival. This is her debut reading for this book. I'm very excited to have her here. And Cynthia will be followed by some open mic readers from Sheila-Na-Gig Online's Spring 2023 issue, and also some other poetry friends joining us tonight. So welcome. Cynthia Anderson has published a dozen poetry collections, including Full Circle by Chala Needles in 2022, The Missing Piece by Velvet Dusk in 2021, and her poems frequently appear in journals and anthologies, and her work has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and a Best of the Net Prize. Cynthia is co-editor of the anthology A Bird Black as the Sun, California Poets on Crows and Ravens, and she's lived in California for over 40 years. My Sheila-Na-Gig online community knows her work well because she's often one of the first faces you see on our issues since her name ends in A. So I always think of Cynthia as like the face of Sheila-Na-Gig, because you're like one of the first things people see when they open an issue each time online. So welcome, Cynthia. It's so exciting to have you here.
Well, thanks, Haley, so much. And it's really does my heart good to see everybody here. Thank you so much for coming and for supporting me in this book. Just a few words about this book in general. This collection is sort of an ode to the places I've lived and some of my favorite places, real and imagined. There's some mythological elements here, a lot of the natural world, and that's really altogether. I mean, these poems are close to my heart, and some of the people who are on the Zoom today are the people who I think of when I think of these poems. So I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, which sort of sets the stage for everything to follow. It's called Walking. The sea air shines with moisture as the sun warms a breeze off the water, and I'm walking, the firm sand yielding ever so slightly to my feet. When I don't know what to do, I set off over beaches or trails or streets. A procession of routes winds down the years, like favorite books in their places, long unopened. My mother believed in walking. After my first steps, she would take me to the post office, a half block from home. No stroller, no matter how long it took. Maybe that's why I put my faith in my feet, and why I always understood something about a wanderer with a bundle. I let my body move when my mind couldn't. Sooner or later, I trusted my mind to follow. Tree spirit, seagrass dweller, snake sliding into water, hawk wheeling away. What I love more than anything is the face of the world turning toward me. So I lived many years in Santa Barbara, and these, a number of these poems are based from that time of my life, and many walks on the beach. This one is about Hendry's Beach in particular. Saltwater woman. She's at the littoral, where churning tides wear away stone, making space out of none. Vibrant green, her long, fine hair swirls everywhere as waves rush into her womb. All around her, starfish arms, anemone mouths, spiny urchins drenched with spume. Avatar of foam, she travels the old way, star seed of ancient days. She waits until you're mesmerized, enters your blood, and never leaves. So a few years back, I went to a writing retreat in Sequoia National Park, and that was a great experience. I hadn't been there since the 1980s when I went there on a trip with my grandfather, which was a very special trip. But anyway, it was wonderful to be under the big trees again. So this is my ode to Sequoia, becoming Sequoia. To live for thousands of years, you can't be perturbed by every insect or squirrel or change in the weather. When wildfire scorches your skin, you heal and keep going. Your intention protects you like an amulet. You push upward according to plan, knuckled base nestled against earth like a fist. You follow the ways of a shaman, transmuting air, rock, soil, water. Your stamina could build a world from ice. You have no quarrel with the sun or with anyone. Radiating light from trunk to crown, stretching taller until one day gravity takes you down. Then you commend your body to the ground among seeds already sown and sprouting, no effort wasted, birds and stars sounding your name. This next one comes from my Ojai days. I had some idyllic years living in Ojai in the late 70s. But this is called Tom's Perdu. Winter. Time and again, I go to bed early and wake up early. While warm air blows down from the ceiling, I pour through my seed catalog. My eyes widen. What's this listing in the lettuce section? Before I can blink, it's Ojai, 1978, and I'm in the foothills behind the old stone house. Live oaks guard a dappled clearing of native plants and wildflowers, growing profusely after heavy rains. My friend points out a green bounty of miner's lettuce. We pick and eat the sweet, tender leaves, then take home as much as we can carry. All spring, I go back to the meadow and forage, feeding myself from the land. For old time's sake, planting a packet of happiness. So another place that's really special to me is Sedona, Arizona. There's several Sedona poems in this book, and I actually was able to go there in the 1960s because my grandparents moved there. And at that time, it hadn't been discovered yet. It was basically undeveloped and very different than it is now, but I still love it and love going there. So I'll read a couple of those poems. The Shallows. In the canyon, where time lays down its layers to be counted, the air fills with alarm when thunder rolls in. No resistance is given. Rain rages like a bonfire. Sycamore leaves brace for the torrent, then let go. Their journey is a prayer in the shape of water, born without kindness or grief, going who knows how far or toward what end. Unconcerned, a black garter snake swims the cold current, alert for fish he will find near the edges, the shallows made new. And this is called Companion. Edges sharp against cobalt sky. I know my eroded bluff better than I know myself. That rosy shapeshifter remains my hourglass, sifting chameleon light. On this earth, there's no easy duration. Shadow after shadow, breath after breath, until the moment of no breath. And what then? Grain by grain, the sandstone thins, taking me with it. So I have an obsession that I've had since I was a kid with Iceland. I've started reading about Iceland when I was just in grade school, and have always been fascinated by it. And I have never actually been. Almost got there. Had a trip planned for April of 2020, and the pandemic put the kibosh on that. So I still haven't been, and yet I have poems. So I'll read a couple of those. This is called The Interior. No one lives there, too remote, merciless, a place for outlaws in hiding, not meant to sustain human life. The wind can rend skin from flesh, the cold take your eyes. Yet you yearn for this waste of glacier and desert, volcano and lake, an untamed wilderness shaped like a heart. Something waits for you on the knife edge of danger. The chance to be someone else, the chance you might not return, the chance Earth herself might sing in a voice you can hear. And this poem is based on a true story of an Icelander. It's called Seal Man. His home was an island, his lot a fisherman. But not until the boat sank did he learn how different he was, how the frigid sea was his element, how he could swim with the ease of a seal hour after hour, reach the shore, climb a cliff, cross a field of volcanic rock, barefoot to his village. And more, how he could talk to birds. However, after he looked at people with the direct and guileless eyes of an animal. How he could say, I'm nothing but a small drop in the ocean. How he found a way to live on. So most of you know that I write an awful lot about the desert, where I live now, Mojave Desert. Not so many desert poems in this book, but these last few are at least related to my desert life. And this one that I'm going to read now comes from the early days of the pandemic. If you remember at the beginning, there was a lot of supply chain issues, and when you went to the grocery store, you couldn't be sure if you did go to the store, what you might find there or not. So someone who lives in my area got enterprising and set up a deal with one of the big health food stores where you could get a box of food delivered to your house every couple weeks. And it was predetermined what would be in there, but we were happy to get whatever it was, you know, and in the first box, there were pears, which startled me because I don't buy fruit out of season. It's something I just don't do. And so here were these pears, these beautiful pears with these little labels on them that said they were from Argentina. And so I had to write a poem. So this is called Ode to a Pear. Do you remember the tree where you were born at the far end of the world? You left your orchard in the Alto Valley, crossed continents and oceans, flew higher than swallows to land in California on my kitchen counter, your perfect flesh ripening with a blush. In the time of COVID, you upturned seasons, autumn Bartlett in Mojave spring. I can hardly grasp you're from Argentina, can't help but think of the energy spent to bring you here. How humans take and take to satisfy a craving. Like you, I exist in this moment, then the next, as long as life will last. And soon, dentro de poco, you'll be part of me. We have a lot of hummingbirds around our property, very friendly hummingbirds. This is called Dr. My Eyes. My hummingbird friend fans her wings in the spray from the hose. Then she settles on a yucca spear, not a foot from my face. We like each other. We like these quiet moments together, gazing and breathing, gazing and breathing. August dawn, the cool of the day evaporates. So I'm a vegetable gardener, and I have an enclosure that's basically like a small fort. It's completely covered top, bottom, and sides with wire mesh. So practically nothing can get in there, but once in a while something does. This is called escape. I enter the garden and latch the door, only to find a moth in the enclosure with me, a siren I step closer to admire, nearly her undoing, since, panicked, she tries to force an exit through half-inch wire mesh and won't stop, even when I open the door. When she breaks free, she's wounded, barely hanging on, leaving me sorry for my curiosity, for crossing the divide between us. Yet her flurry feels familiar. How often have I let fear drive an action that injured my life when I had a wide berth to fly? I'll never know the answer. There at the edge of awareness, sky just out of reach. So I'm going to close with the last poem in the book, Arrival, which is a beginning, actually. So Arrival. Here is the light that allows another day to happen. Every living thing leans toward that beam from the east. Golden after the gray of dawn, a slight breeze stirring branches and leaves. This is what we came for, the light riding higher, lengthening shadows behind us. That's it. Thank you. Thanks for
Yay!
thanks for being here, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's really great to hear those poems that, after the process of putting the book together and, waiting for it to come out and to finally hear you read them. It's a great celebration. And I'm honored to have published the collection as well. So the Cynthia Anderson reading from Arrival. So thank you so much. We'll be turning now to our open mic readers. We have a great bunch of readers tonight, some of whom Cynthia has invited from her poetry world, and many of whom cross over into the Sheila-Na-Gig world as well. And we have contributors here from Sheila-Na-Gig's Spring 2023 issue as well. And so we're going to start off with David. So David, why don't you introduce yourself, and looking forward to hearing your work.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Cynthia, for inviting me. So good to be with you again. See you. I know Cynthia from her Santa Barbara days. It seems so long ago now. I'm going to read two poems. The first one is about the place where I grew up, which is in the Central Valley of California. And this poem came from a visit to my sister. It's called The Long Walk Down a Country Road, Goshen, California. My brother-in-law measures the distance for me, 1.5 miles, give or take. I can do that. So I start walking. My brother-in-law has a genius for bad news and tells me, "You're old now. However far you go means the same distance walking back." Those 3 miles, more or less, take all I've got. Spring has come without the rains. Oh, sure, April saw a couple of passing showers, just enough to wet the taste for more, just enough to waken golden poppies alongside the road. Flowers don't need much encouragement, not wasting time trying to get away from this place. The valley looks dry and homely now. Perhaps it always was. No one pays much attention. Fields grow equal parts sustenance and despair. A recipe as dependable as sun rising over Sierra snows. If you let it, loneliness trickles down those mountains into empty years that move as slow as cactus. I got away from here and didn't, all at the same time, in the way no one truly leaves from where they came, still reeking the provincial smell of earth long after a rain. Optimism erupts in acres of corn, cheeks flaunt pink off peach blossoms. Proof anything grows here, even people. Little changes except the inevitable curse of time. Low houses, endless rows of cows and cotton plants, like the people, seem to stand in place. After a while, even a reasonable person gets used to it. I got out of here the same way people always do, 1 foot ahead of another, one sin ahead of it all. And this poem is called An Old Day. The waitress seems in a hurry for my table, clearing something off with each pass until only I, my mocha, and ever smaller sips persist. I'm renting this chair after all, and in no rush to go outside and look for something else to do. The sidewalk too isn't in much of a hurry. Heat and lack of shade trees keep most walkers away. The talk from the few friends who manage to gather, veers toward the many vagaries of aging, boring topics to most, even to most of them. Today hints at being a lot like yesterday, buckets full of no designs and no surprises. Surprises at my age are not likely welcome. My disappointment with the world nears completion. Nothing happens according to expectations, just wishes, really, ignorant fantasies concocted to nurse some delusion of purpose. Nothing may be overstatement, but no one denies humans, you and me, fall short. Today was born old. This earth where we spend our brief time aging, chasing little treasures of happiness when, if found, last only as long as happiness, which is not long and never long enough, costs all the breath we own. Listen, can you hear? Listen to the creaks and groans of rusted gears as the world strains to turn away. Thank you.
My name is Vivian Faith Prescott, and I'm reading poetry to you from Wrangell, Alaska. If you have a Google Maps, you can look at Southeast Alaska, and we're a little island shaped like a snow goose flying to the Sticking River Flats, tucked up in against the mainland. So we're a remote little island, about 30 miles long and about 8 miles wide in the center. So a lot of my poetry reflects living in Wrangell, which I can make seem a little bit more exciting than it really is. And everyone here is my cousin. So occasionally I put a cousin in my poems, but this one was written, and these two are in the journal. So this poem was written during the pandemic because I used to basically go out in nature as much as I could, even though I technically live in nature, but this one's called Encounters. Glacier brushes winter into shadows and light. My footsteps clack over stones on the riverbank like an old wagon traveling on ancient roads. Everything is softening. The ice sweats, history peels back. The deer's jawbone rests atop a log like a half-forgotten treasure. The stench of disappearing is all around us, and back home, news of mass graves, no funeral processions, weeping, this resting of our glorious age. Yet out here, there's a chance encounter with a sleek otter heading into the willow. This loud silence is a vaccine if I listen close enough. And this, I often use metaphor, trees, whales, whatever, sea lions, seaweed too, which I really could relate to all those poems you read. But this poem is called An Old Growth Forest Body Reflects on Young Growth. This one, a seedling not wanted, was trapped but bloomed anyway, like red clusters of high bush cranberries, and was going to tear me open, they said. This one that did not wake, that could not be saved, that if fallen would have crushed my living limbs. Turns out they were wrong. And when they opened the forest of my belly, there were cysts and twists and stands of rotting cedar. And already there were cells forming a curve of neural tube like a banana slug sliming through contorted hairy cap. Here I can say unwanted pregnancy at 16. Trouble was, this forest was chopped already, and the moss was soaked in blood and chemicals that suspended my life between the branches of shadows and shade. This one, still was not wanted. It would not be a nurse log, not a natural bridge over a creek. In fact, not wanted even more. I'd rather have stripped tree bark from myself and woven a basket with it. Can you not want something or someone even more after you know of its roots? Can you uncount tree rings on a stump and unwind its record of beetle larva infestations and winter storms? Turns out, yes, and with no regrets. Thank you.
Sorry, it took me a little while to unmute. I'm Judy Kronenfeld, and I live in Riverside, California. And I'm going to read one poem from my most recent book. This is the book is called Groaning and Singing, and was published by Future Cycle in early 22. And then I will read one poem from the spring edition of Sheila-Na-Gig, because Haley said she would adore anybody who read from the issue, and so I'd like to be adored. Most of my books have a section that has something to do with the nature at the end. So in a way, this is nature in the largest sense, the nature of things. Terrestrial. Pale gibbous rock, craters and mountains almost showing, blooming into the blue wash of early evening as I leave the grocery looking up, and the blackbirds flowing underneath, scrolling and unscrolling. What are you gazing at? Someone on her way in asks, expectation in her voice, as if a planetary phenomenon might be occurring. Just the moon, I say, our piece of stone, low in the wide brush of sky. Claimable, familiar, strange. For a moment, not the moon, silver disk hammered to an adornment's thinness, but simply a moon in its 3D rockiness, as if I were looking out at a barren body spun off a spiraling exoplanet over some primordial horizon. Yet how soon, unhesitating, evening sinks down with slow, accustomed graciousness as I drive home. It's almost dark as I carry my bread, cheese, and apples tenderly from the car. The mica flake moon fixed above my chimney begins its glittering. What an unearned sense of completion as I unlock my door, as if I'd been out for hours in the perturbations of the air, as if I'd helped steer the blazing sun to its hiding place in the sea. I am, although a very old representative of the immigrant generation, the first generation, that is, after the immigrants. And I often think, and cannot stop thinking in some ways, about my parents. When you have immigrant parents, mine are both from Eastern Europe. They've been gone for very many years. Their mystery never ceases. You never know everything you wish you'd known or asked about them. I know Margaret, who's here, knows that as well. So this poem kind of speaks to that in its way. And this is the one that was in Sheila-Na-Gig this spring. Happy to be there. The lost past within the past. I remember my long gone mother's fears, how she huddled us home from the subway stop in the ominous night, furtive as the mugger she dreaded. How she dipped only her feet in the broad foam apron of the sea and leapt back when a far wave reared. How she always anticipated the dire turns of fate that scared her, like having her daughter pulled under by wild beast girls up the street and ruined in the 19th century sense. She never quite melted into my birthright pot, unlike her youngest brother, who gently chided her for babying me too much. He'd make a quiet ceremony of reading my essays for school, eyes beaming the adult attention that said I was a person, while I waited breathless for his sanction. Yet today, I keep hearing his inconsolable moan 30 years ago when she died. Stella the Starka, Stella the Starka. Her name strangely joined with strong. Was her strength to have survived the light annihilating stroke, the months of recuperation lying monument still, the second stroke, and then almost surgery for the broken hip? Or was my uncle's cry a door I ignored that might have opened to the buried past none of his generation ever shared with us? We, the American kids, never asked. To Vienna, once their home, to Vienna abandoned, to the Olympic, sister vessel of the Titanic, heading towards New York, carrying the whole family away from the coming darkness. To my uncle, a preteen barely out of sailor suits, and my mother, his big sister, a grown woman 10 years older, not yet a greenhorn. Could she once have moved with head unbowed, not merely long-suffering, but brave, Stella the Strong? I wish I had asked. Did she clasp her kid brother in a fierce hug as their ship rose and sank on gray Atlantic waves, and he sobbed? Did she say, "It's an adventure, Izzy, but you're safe," and lead him to the promenade where the wind-driven spray blew in their faces? Thank you.
Hi, I am actually feeling kind of like a fish out of water. I'm coming to you guys from the deep South, Madison, Mississippi. And I'm going to read two poems. The first was just published in the journal. And then the second is, both poems are actually part of my first book, which will be out hopefully sometime this year. So we'll see. But thanks so much for this opportunity. And I'll read two poems. Firstborn. Who knows not where a wasp does wear its sting? William Shakespeare. And this is about the birth of my first son. 7 red velvet ants crossed my path. I should have known. It was copperhead weather, the color of sumac, childbirthing season, when Earth leaned away from its sun a full minute. Season of hummingbirds on Cleome and bee balm, of migrating monarchs on milkweed and zinnia, of geese flying V's. It was the season for stinging. Weather was perfect for velveteen wasps. I should have known. It was spider mum time, blackbird skies and buzzards circling, tangling, strangling, nuchal cord season. September's moon as empty as an O, as empty as 0, an empty Apgar for a baby born blue. A red sand glass sifted the black widow minute he did not breathe. Looped cord cut free, bagged, he began. His brown eyes jaundiced moon yellow. He'd stutter at 5, refused to wear shoes half his life. Dressed in anything tight, he'd cry. Sock seams overloaded his senses. He roams now, looking for loose, running from confines, Bulgaria, Thailand. He wears tivas in winter to give his toes room. He remembers the noose. And I don't have paper in front of me, so I'm scrolling quickly through an entire book to try to find the next poem I'm going to read real quick. Thank you. This next poem is about the end of my 30-year marriage. So, if I can find it. I'm so sorry. Thanks for putting up with this. Oh my goodness. Okay, the marriage. On my seat back screen, a tatter-finned fish, as if to coerce a confession, as if to extract its secret at 30,000 feet, flings again and again a clam against a coral ledge, while my husband of 30 years dreams of tides and flight. Why do we assume believable what is finite? The rabble of dove-white shells beneath the reef shelf like a battalion of wings gathered against our arrogance. We do not fly far before the land begins to baffle. Rock stacked upon rock, red arches and cathedrals, flash flood and dry wash. Beside the arroyo, desert willow, crucifixion thorn and sycamore, the white and gray and beige of bones. Sedona's light so hostile it halos all it touches. Doves in russet dust bathe in the contradiction of Oak Creek's dissipating mist. Oceans hold almost all Earth's water, but in Coconino Forest, Oak Creek carved this canyon, this path to the Red Butte's pinnacle, switchbacked and shifting, like years of marriage cut through rust-red rock. I'm trying to reconcile. I'm trying to inhabit this story. Across another river once, I hiked another hill alone to the Basilica. Can truth be simply strict insistence that a thing is so? For my brother's aortic arch, for my malignancy, I had imagined dragging myself on bloodied knees across the plaza's cobblestones, among palomas with pilgrims whispering, fingering rosaries, feathers settling around us like petals. Some carried red roses for her, mother of the very true deity, their virgin, her mantle cerulean. Yet I refused to scrape my knees. For a fistful of pesos, I pinned beside the altar for him a nickel heart, a charm, alongside legs and livers and arms, for myself a breast. I dropped my penciled pleas strictly into the slotted metal box. In the story dragged here upon the tide of centuries, she appears on Tepeyac Hill. I'm trying to catch my husband's hand as we climb, his eyes. I'm trying to synchronize our strides. In the story, Castilian roses bloom, desert red, her image a watery mirage imprinted on the tilma. I am begging for his hand, reaching up through a sea in Sedona of ash and alder and salt cedar, through juniper's blue seeds, in the heat, its needles like coral branches. Oak Creek winds slender below us, a capillary beneath this story's skin. A lone claret cup cactus bleeds red at the summit of all these years. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jude Deason. These two poems are inspired by my experience of living on a 500-acre ranch in northern New Mexico, far, far, far away from everything. The Gully Washer. What came could not be called rain, but a whipping, a walloping, a voltage of spears, and the tired tread wound became a puddle, and the puddle raised a lake, and through its center raged a river. And the woman in the Jeep, who wanted so to go home, found herself this side of the gully washer, far from the small adobe with the mountain lion tracks out back, and the red Jeep, and the romance of no generator. She found herself far from the house that held now only him. On the far side of the gully, past the vanished crossing, far down the red mud road. Desolate river. I planned to plant Russian sage, feathered green, purple glorious, along the lane to the barn. But the pounded ground rejects the shovel. The horse lays bare the pasture. The snake rick-rack slithers on the rock silt of the desolate river. Deserts are hard, my sister tells me. I tell her the nights crack wide and clear, Andromeda wide, blizzard of light. Mane whipped, nostril flared, my boots off body dropped on a cot under the buckshot of the Milky Way. Thank you.
I wanted a poem of place for Cynthia, and I chose the place where I grew up, which was a very dry and sweltering hot island. Seasons, years later, they couldn't recall the taste of the water kept in a clay jar that stood on the kitchen floor, lidded with a bundle of cloth like a bandage, like the dressing of a wound. Darkness was the keeper of freshness, windows like loopholes of dungeons, drawn curtains, shutters half closed. Summer asked for twilight, they knew. Thickness also kept the sun rays at bay. Those walls could hide treasures or corpses. Pots weighed more than their contents. Hefty slabs packed water or wine as lovers would have. The icemen came once a week. They smashed almonds, made orgeat. They pressed lemons, refreshing, whatever that meant. Like those fans that opened like flowers trimmed in lace and gold, flapped their wings like tropical birds perched on tireless wrists. Children didn't have fans, and still they loved summer. Endless light, nights that heat cracked open, the contrast between bright outsides and inside penumbra. Midday naps on the hammocks when nothing could be done but waiting for shade, for a gust of ocean breeze reaching the hilltop, where the house, like them, lay mobile and quiet. The breeze, mixing sea salt with the mineral sting of their sweat. Lazily, they sweated flies as they looked at the dancing geckos, envying reptile sang-froid. Later, they were lulled by the cricket's song. They learned patience. They watched stars falling from the sky at mid-August to come kiss the ground. And I had prepared one poem. Since I have another one, I think I'm gonna fish out the one that was in the winter issue of Sheila-Na-Gig, and I didn't read it. So here it is. It has changed title meanwhile, and now it is called Sleepwalker. here. So the night was the sea was the night. She got used to the purple glare, the translucent streak of ultramarine mottling the darkness. She understood the vibration of black, here compact, there porous, opening itself like an archway. The boat was small and frail, made of rattan, a junk at the mercy of the waves. A coal bell was fastened to the bow in guise of a figurehead. It rang like a faint tocsin with no sadness attached. Salt had bitten her lips with its ardent kiss. The blind girl once explained how the light, the lost residue ambling at the very top of her corneas, was painful, harmful flashes disturbing the quiet. She got used to the modulation of black, dotted scarlet, green, indigo. The sun never pierced the curtain of clouds, slate sky wiped clear of all signs. If she closed her eyes, she saw hieroglyphs spelling an inner parable. She pondered the gift of immortality, wishing to return the package intact. The boat was very frail, like a moon-shaped nail clip, like a broken eggshell, like a fallen eyelash. Thank you.
I have 2 poems for you, and I think I have 1 poem. I moved to Oregon from Santa Barbara area 23 years ago, and this was one of my early poems when I finally understood what Oregon was about. The ripening. In the blackberry stillness of late August, we go picking berries swollen with summer heat. The air is hot with the perfume of ripe berries and parched grass. Deftly between leaf and thorn, we reach for ripe clusters that tumble spontaneously when scarcely touched. Some fall into our hands, others fall deep into the bramble, rustling darkly as they land. At first we feed each other the plumpest berries, but soon we diverge, distracted by such abundance, hands moving to bucket, reaching to mouth. We murmur as we pick, each aware of the other's voice, missing the words, but sensing what they mean. Pale petals of late blossom, tight green berries, hard and small as currants, fleeing to the vine beside red berries only half ripe and overripe berries already starting to rot. Sometimes we become snagged and have to detach thorn from skin, lick away a droplet of blood, or we stop for a moment to sort strands of thistle down from our harvest. Behind us, the waist-high grass is dry and bright. The thistles have burst open, livid purple turning to silver. The yellow blooms of tansy are turning gold. Berries in our buckets, in our hands, our mouths, the brief sweet elixir of juice in our throats. We are stained, we are drunk, we think we are content, yet still we are reaching for more. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And thank you, Cynthia, for inviting me. I live in Joshua Tree, but I've stayed for several months with my son. At this point, I had stayed for several months with my son in the Carmel Valley. So this first poem is about that. It's clear and sunny. All the fog has whispered away. I'm walking here under the shade of live oaks, past the lavender field where we used to walk. When will I see you again? The morning dove moans. I miss you, my friend. It's been a long year. The ferns beside the path link into each other, making small clasped hand shadows. The sun warms my back. A dog barks in the distance. I steal an orange from a tree on someone's patio. Remember how we were thieves together? So much time has passed. Will I ever see you again? Huge twisted pines lean over the roadway. Their heavy limbs drop scented needles. Matilaha poppies stand sentries waiting for the fires to set them free. They are such beautiful things. How many things are set free by the breeze? I want to be free. I love this one-lane bridge. Here you have to wait for the other car to get through or go through first. How does one decide? Some clouds are grouping to the east. I never want to leave this place. I think we cause problems here in paradise because it's too much beauty for us to bear. This poem is a little different. It's sort of based on some of the Spanish poets that I read. This is Julia de Vargas inspired, I suppose. And they're love couplets. There is a harshness in my soul, spread through these coarse sand and wind-hallowed rocks, sculpted smooth, modeled hands, and feet through centuries of little rain. The sparseness of spirit and survival, fingers incessant summer mad with sun, light a waterless sleep alone on the sheer rock petroglyphs of lost meaning, etched on my forehead, desire spun silver, conchology and the taste of paprika, tongued and dried buckwheat hair, strands wrapped around my fingers, parched lips, moistened with longing only your wet kisses can quench, night flakes into the cold of a million universes. Your arm becomes my pillow. Morning comes and outstretched vultured wings, flinging off the desert dust. And this last one is a poem about a cathedral built of salt outside of Krakow, actually. Outside of Krakow, there is a cathedral built of salt. 1,000 feet underground, not a cave, but a place of brilliance. Great blocks of pristine salt, a carved altar, floors like Carrara marble, and a crystal chandelier like some miraculous vision out of Lohengrin. Niches full of saints, a virgin and a child, all of salt. If you wet your finger and run it over the carved statues, you can taste the saltiness of Mother Earth. Lick your lips, wonder of wonder, these Polish miners carved a church, a Catholic church where Sunday Mass is still celebrated. It is as if they made the mind so deep and dark, a thing of light, and a life underground into a celebration of going deep, or being trapped in darkness, they brought out light. All the salt chandeliers and crystals are light, cool and smooth and white and salty and singing. Nothing lives in salt except in exaltation of the world above or below, the rich, black, gloomy earth, the womb of salt, the salt lick of life, song of salt, sing alleluia, alleluia. Everything is clean and bright and saturated with its own light. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Sabol, and I'm coming to you from Akron, Ohio. And I want to say, first of all, to thank you to Cynthia for that wonderful reading. I love the book Arrival, and it was wonderful to hear those poems read by the poet. And also for everyone else who read, just wonderful work, I know, it's just uplifting. So thank you also, Haley, for just putting these readings together, and just to have this community, even if it's makeshift, just come together for one evening. So I would like to read 2 poems from my book, Imagine a Town by Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. This is how I started my relationship with Sheila-Na-Gig, was through this book that came out right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's still getting its due. The first poem that I'm going to read is called On Losing My Hearing. The day begins absent the steady tick of the kitchen clock, imitating a thin rain against the window, and under the skin rhythm to the morning's choreography. Absent the fricatives wash of ocean, azure, sounds that vibrate in the elevated frequencies of speech, so that shame sounds like home. Summer, the thwack of a butcher knife through the season's first melon, pitch of a cricket's wing against toothed wing, its passion call lost in the night. The trains moan through the small hours' darkness, exact timbre of longing, curls a body into itself, soothed to hear its own sadness fading. Oh, minute trio, hammer, anvil, stirrup, always alert for the familiars, clock, song, the lock's quick tumble, stilled. The crinkle of this page turning unheard. And one poem for the season, since it is, thank you, since it is, at least in Northeastern Ohio, in this part of the country, dandelion season. Well, they're all popping up. I think they're beautiful, but my neighbors don't agree when my lawn turns yellow. So this is called Dandelion Manifesto. We are the inexorable gold heads, each with some hundreds bold florets that pock the lawns with cadmium announcements. We are edible, medicinal, potable, beautiful, brilliant bringers of bees, and every spring my neighbor stretches his lank, aging frame across his front yard, panning through the grass for order or evil, then leverages his special tool designed just for this, against the moist soil to yank our demon brass buttons. He forages down to our roots' tendriling nerves, his lips a tight tremor of syllables as he parts lime green blades, scours the ground in a passion of eradication. Our starry seed heads from one untended lawn will waft again this season to his accidental marriage of neglect and purpose, gentle reminder that nothing in this world is perfect and that it is. Thank you.
And I would like to read a story of my mother's voyage as she told it to me. It's called Coming to America in 1906. And my mother was the product of a love affair between a governess, and a policeman. And she was left in an orphanage and said she would be sent for, and she was when she was 17, although she was raised by a foster family until then. Coming to America, 1906. On the Bremen Pier, bustling with noisy immigrants, my mother finds the ticket office and stands in a line for Hungarians. Ticket in one hand, heavy satchel in the other, warm shawl around her thin shoulders. Margaret views her new reflection in the large window. Straight dark hair she cut to just below her earlobes, trying to look American for her waiting mother. Gone the waist-length braid that took years to grow. The shipping clerk shouts, "Next," and she moves to the counter, offering the prepaid ticket sent by her mother. He asked for her sponsor, but none was mentioned in the letter sent with the ticket. Anyone under 18 needs a sponsor. She explained she will turn 18 in a week. You cannot take this ship. Rules are rules. Margaret's shoulder shake with her heavy sobs. The old woman behind her with long white hair braided around her head offers to sponsor her. They both have second-class tickets and can share a cabin. The disgruntled clerk stamps both tickets. On board the huge iron-hulled steamship, they find their room. Margaret takes the upper bunk, giving Mrs. Ola the bottom, marveling at the sink with running water in their cabin. The rumbling engines groan, the horns bellow. The ship leaves the dock and the prow slices through the Atlantic, heading toward the setting sun. Margaret leads her sponsor outside for a final glance. She hears a violin playing a Hungarian folk tune, sees dancing in steerage. We should be there too. Mrs. Ola chuckles. Within 2 days, Margaret can keep nothing down as winds hurl the ship through tall swells. After 4 days, the winds calm, and Mrs. Ola wishes her a happy birthday, offering her a small wrapped box. Inside, Margaret finds a locket on a gold-plated chain. For a photo of your mother who is waiting for you. In the dining room that evening, Margaret wears her gift as waiters singing happy birthday approach her with a cake and 18 lit candles. Others join in. She blows out her candles as a messenger calls her name. She raises her hand and he places a telegram in it. Your mother must have remembered. Margaret asks Mrs. Ola to read the English message. She reads it silently, then leads Margaret outside to 2 deck chairs. She takes her hand. Your mother died last night, child. She was very ill. Margaret screams. First, she was left in an orphanage and now abandoned in a strange country. I will be alone again. No, your stepfather will meet you. I must return to Hungary. Mrs. Ola shakes her head. Impossible. The ticket costs too much. But I must. Rosanani was the only mother I knew who loved me. I never heard my mother's voice or even saw her smile. If you want to hear her speak, listen to your own voice. If you want to see her smile, look in a mirror. A woman carried you in her womb for 9 months. You were 1. Now you must carry her in your heart and make her proud. Margaret watches dense sea fog slither over the ship's railing and silently glide toward them. Hearing the baritone blast of the foghorn, she wipes away her tears and leads her sponsor back inside, knowing she must find the courage to survive. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our open mic readers tonight, friends who were invited to read, and contributors to Sheila-Na-Gig Edition Spring 2023. And thank you again to our featured reader, Cynthia Anderson, celebrating her book Arrival. To have everybody here. Thank you so much.